reason for us all to live and something we could fight for. I might just help a man up to his feet or hold a newborn, but no matter what I do, my hands remembering my rifle.
Welcome to Veteran State of Mind. I'm your host, Geraint Jones, and I want to wish you guys a very happy new year. I am currently sitting with a blanket over my head, trying to get a good audio. The reason being because I'm recording this intro at home. So if you're here for the first time, we will be going to studio quality in a minute. Until then, please just bear with the guy with the blanket over his head while I introduce today's guest. And actually, before we get into that, if we do have new listeners with us today, welcome first and foremost, and also just to give you a bit of background about what this podcast is. I'm a former British Army infantry soldier myself. I had a very ordinary, I would say typical kind of experiences in the war on terror, Iraq, Afghanistan, that kind of thing. I'm now a writer and an author. I get to work with a lot of other people. I get to hear their stories, and that's kind of how the podcast was born. I was having such great conversations with people that I didn't want to keep them to myself, and we have a lot of the guys that I worked with on the podcast, but we also have other people as well. Today's guest is one of them who I don't work with, but who are just very generous in giving up their time, their wisdom, and their stories. And I hope you guys enjoy them. If you want to stick with us, if you're here for the first time, we do have some episodes which are conversations like today, and then we have other episodes which I describe as reasonably well-informed bollocks, where me and my mate Joe get together, Joe veteran himself. Joe also been out to Iraq and Afghanistan, that kind of thing. So me and Joe just kind of put the will to right. Oh my God, sorry, I'm choking. It's not blanket related. So guys, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all the returning guests. Returning guests. Thank you to you, and thank you to also the returning listeners. Great to have you guys. Podcast goes from strength to strength, and you guys are responsible for that. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell a mate. Please tell a friend. Make a post on social media. Take you 2 minutes. And it can really make a difference in people's lives. And on that note, we do get messages from people who have, who have kind of had a lot of help from the podcast and from the guests. So, just to let you know, guys, I do pass those messages onto the guests, so that if you ever send one of those in, they do get passed on, and guests are very grateful for them, and I am extremely grateful for them. I really appreciate those, because it lets us know that we're on the right path. Obviously, always work to be done to get better, but I like to think that we are on our way there. Right, without further ado, guys, I want to get to today's guest. He's a returning guest, been on the podcast before. His name is Ed Calderon. He is he was in the Mexican police force, done all kind of executive protection and counter-narcotics work down there. An extremely kind of well-versed man in this area of security, escapology, and the occult. Ed is one of the reasons I really enjoy having Ed on this podcast, but also listening to him on others. I came across Ed on the Joe Rogan podcast. It's just he's very kind of wise man. Asks a lot of questions, and then he tries to find the answers, and that's what we're all about on this podcast. So please give a very warm welcome to Mr. Ed Calderon. Ed, thanks so much for coming back on the podcast, mate. Good to see you.
Good to see you guys again.
Mate, you know what's funny is I listened back to our first episode that we did. So if anyone's listening, they haven't listened, this episode 74, go back and listen to that, just so you can see how clever me and Ed are, that we predicted that 2020 was the appetizer for 2021. In fact, I wrote down what you said was, you said 2021 will be an interesting ride. And you haven't been wrong, mate.
Yeah. I mean, it's, we lost Vicente Fernandez, which is like Mexican George Washington, Taiwan is almost, Ukraine is about to, everything's pretty interesting right now.
It fucking is, mate. There's a lot we can get into, but I was just saying, you're down in Tijuana at the moment, and I was just kind of asking, about it, and you were saying that there's a kind of a change in the dynamic of how people are operating, the criminal elements are operating there. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, it's a generalized feeling you're getting throughout the country of a settling in or a hunkering down. During the COVID epidemic, you saw an expansion of the new generation cartel all over the country, and then you saw a clear sign by the federal government that said, we're basically taking a side. We're not going to lay off Sinaloa cartel for a bit and just going to go straight into a new generation cartel, right? So they basically been hunkering down in places and have developed a kind of like an insurgency type of vibe you get from some of these criminal groups and how they're operating. They're not down for open warfare in some of the places where they take control. So they just adopt a classic mafioso type strategy of gaining control over a local drug market, like they are in Tijuana. Um, People think that drug trafficking is just about moving drugs through Mexico. The local drug markets in Mexico are ginormous, and the specific phenomenon you're seeing in Tijuana right now is the economic migrants, which is it's fascinating if you think about it, right? So California economic migrants are coming to live in Tijuana, and with them are bringing their expensive drug habits, which has made a flourishing local drug market in Tijuana just explode. So people that can't afford to live in California because they can't afford $1 million house in San Diego are living in Tijuana and are changing Tijuana. Tijuana, it's a friend of mine told me when he came to visit Tijuana is that it looked like that movie Elysium,
Yeah.
in some parts of it, you don't need to do a lot of dress setup to make it look like that movie. But right now, Sky luxury departments are coming up all over the city. So it's just an injection of money. And with that, two major cartels fighting over it. And violence of the kind you used to see in gangland era, LA, drive-bys and stuff like that are like a common thing now. And levels of violence going on where whole families are murdered. There's a recent murder of a couple and their two or three kids, I think, were assassinated by for cartel connection, right?
Because they were a family member of a rival cartel.
Yeah. So there's basically a no quarters given type war going on right now, where there's absolutely no, we're going to respect women and children. There's that all of that is gone. It's like a war of attrition right now going on in parts like Tijuana. It's the same all over Mexico.
Yeah, and then once one side has done that, once that's happened once, then there's just that. It's then people start to try and outdo each other, don't they? Which is kind of how like a lot of this stuff got to that point in the first place, right? It's like, okay, well, we're going to hang somebody off a bridge, all right, well, we're going to hang 3 people off a bridge, and then it just goes on and on.
A conversation I had with a friend of mine who's a special operations guy in the U.S. He said the uniqueness of your experience, Ed, doesn't come from your training or from whatever. It comes from the fact that you got to do it live in a live environment like Mexico. Mexico as an environment, it's the closest thing we have to a Call of Duty game,
That's fucked up, but it's true.
But it's true, it's the only, you're seeing drones that are now being mounted with short-barreled, submachine guns being used against, conventional military force. Drones that have explosives on them, drones with chemical weapons on them being utilized against National Guard units. You're seeing the cartels beat the military in open warfare. It's an interesting and insane time to kind of sit back and look at Mexico as what it is as far as a case study for the world later on in future conflicts and what it's providing. It is providing a myriad of case studies for the people that study this type of stuff elsewhere in the world.
Well, I've told people before, mate, so I try and keep, like, when I first started getting interested in Mexico, it seemed to be there's a few cartels and you could reasonably keep on top of things a bit, even if you weren't in Mexico. And like now, like I follow your account, I follow Demola. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it properly. Demolaire, sorry. Excuse the Welsh. And then, and then it's just this is springing up and this is splintered and this group are coming up and this group are moving here. I mean, it would be a full-time job to keep on top of this stuff. One of the things, before I forget it, I just want to ask you, you're saying there's people moving to Tijuana, which is causing this kind of like Elysium effect.
Yeah.
What about Tulum or Tulum? How you say it? I don't know how you say it, but I know. So I saw at the beginning of the pandemic, loads of Americans who were kind of just like, fuck this, I don't want to be locked up at home. We're just going like, right, Tulum is the place to go, or I don't know how I'm saying to me.
Same thing.
And so what's happened there in terms of cartel activity?
An explosion of local drug markets, an explosion of local sex service or organized sex trafficking going around in and around some of these towns to feed these people that are coming in with their own, needs for products and services. So there was recently a case of a few people in jet skis basically went into a resort town and fired some shots into the air, and then fled. And the execution of two high-level cartel distributors in a resort town nearby. Russian mafia involved in some of this as well. I mean, it's a mess, but all of it is basically that that Elysium effect of having Americans move out of the United States during the pandemic and setting up communities or basically buying out rental properties in areas like the Louvre, like Tijuana, and turning it into a thriving local drug market, and the violence that comes with people competing for those dollars, right? So it is obviously a sign of destabilization and the lack of an effective military or police force in these areas, but also it's a sign of people coming in with a very specific craving or need, and people filling these needs, and the competition to fill these needs illegally by some of these cartels.
And that's what's kind of interesting is the keyword illegal, because a lot of people go from the UK and other countries to go and get high in Amsterdam. And obviously, there is criminal activity in Amsterdam. I can tell you that for a fact, because I got mugged and my friend got his camera taken. I pulled a knife on my friend and I was like, looks like your problem. I was going to step back. Sorry, Phil, if you're listening. And, but we're not getting but there's no open war on the streets in Amsterdam, So, that's kind of an interesting one, isn't it? Because you have that drug tourism in Amsterdam, but you don't have the violence, or at least not on this anywhere near the same level.
The amounts of money being exchanged in some of these environments, it might make it a different environment. The fact that we have the United States, which is everybody has a gun country. I've seen some private gun collections that would pale any official government armory that I saw in my time active in Mexico. So that is a part of the phenomenon that needs to be taken into account. The fact that we have such a porous border, not just a porous border as far as being able to traffic drugs across it, but also being able to traffic massive amounts of firearms, ammunition. Now we're starting to see some of the stuff that went on the black market in Afghanistan after the drawback pop up in places like Mexico, in the form of grenades, in the form of night vision devices, in the form of firearms of different kinds. So it's basically it's Mexico itself is very porous. It doesn't have a good structure around it to keep it shore safe from people trafficking things into it, and much less trafficking things out of it. So that's definitely a factor as far as the ultra violent nature of the war that's raging on in the country.
Presumably, does heroin come from Afghanistan to Mexico and then get shipped into?
No.
Or is that not a thing? So this is like a new smuggling route for just specifically for like weapons and stuff to come out of there?
As far as I know, some of these cartels have actually gone and taken control over the source. The places down in Colombia and other parts of South America, where the production is being had. So they're actually
it's cocaine production.
Yeah.
Now.
So actually, Mexican cartels are trying to gain control over the source as well. So there's new generation cartels operative in South America, and Sinaloa cartel operations in South America as well. So the drug routes go from the Atlantic and or the Gulf of Mexico into places like Northern Africa, and drugs go to Northern Africa, then get sent to Europe or trafficked to Europe in different ways. So it's like a way station. And on the same drug route, things come back from North Africa or from that area. Sometimes out in the ocean, the exchanges happen and stuff like that, including some man pads. I heard through some of my colleagues. They were seeing some remote guided stuff start showing up in southern Mexico right now, which is I don't know a lot about them myself, but just speaking to people that do know a lot about them, there's specific details about the housing of the electronics inside of some of these man pads that will tell you how old it is, and these are not old, basically. So stuff like that is pretty concerning to kind of see show up. That's related to that ring drug route that goes from South America, Mexico, and parts like that into places like North Africa. But heroin is actually being grown in Mexico. It's horrible heroin. It's apparently not that potent because of the years of nutrients being leached from the ground and all of these pot fields that fed the U.S. drug habit since the 60s and 70s. But the way they figured to give it an extra kick was to lace it with fentanyl. Right as the prescription opiate epidemic kind of died down in the U.S., the cartels figured out fentanyl and heroin. So it's been like a perfect storm after perfect storm.
Mate, I saw something the other day. I think it said something like 200 overdoses deaths a day in America. Well, with a lot of them attributed to fentanyl. Can you tell people a bit more about these kind of like synthetic opioids and stuff, and what kind of what's in it for the cartel, and what's the bad news for the end user?
The fentanyl is, it's used in the pharmaceutical industry as a painkiller. Obviously, dosages and measurements and standards of production are not something that the cartels are going to follow down in Mexico. Also, some of these chemicals that are being utilized are not just fentanyl. There's other derivatives that single particle gets changed in the chemical formula, and it's a whole different substance. And all of these are being produced and or engineered in China. The connection between China and Mexico has always been the precursor source and or the material source for some of the drugs that are put together in Mexico and then sent on to the U.S. So you take something like heroin, which is in and of itself not that potent. It's not like some of that Afghan or Golden Triangle stuff that you see in the movies. It's light colored brown, but you lace it with something like fentanyl, and it gives it otherworldly properties, at least for the end user. Quantities and loads and just variations in crops and products go out, and then you start seeing people just dying off of people across the country. A dying off of a generation of people across the country, like you say, like 200 overdoses or something like that, as far as numbers of people ODing in the United States. That doesn't. I don't know if it takes into account that the new kind of phenomenon you're seeing as far as fentanyl is it's cartels manufacturing bogus pain medication with fentanyl, which is also now showing up in the United States and is responsible for a bunch of deaths all over the country.
Is it not also? It's also in. They put it in Molly and coke and stuff as well, right? They just, or is it?
You used to sprinkle cocaine on weed and shit like that, right? This is the new that, I guess.
It's nuts, man. Because I just keep telling my friends in America, it's like if you're gonna go if you're going to party or anything, you got to be testing your stuff out there, because there's so many of these, because I've always been a big believer that MDMA and stuff should be legal in Western countries. But like, I just don't think there's no argument for that being illegal. But like now, just like, look, man, the fact is it's not. So anything you are buying is illegal. And there's a lot of like young people just going to raves and stuff in America and just, dying.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, they died of MDMA. I'm like, no, they didn't die of MDMA. They died of fentanyl, which they were told is MDMA, but it wasn't MDMA that killed them. And unfortunately, that then sets back actually getting stuff that's legal and is safe. One of the things, mate, have you ever heard of I'm sure you have heard of it, Ibogaine?
Yeah.
Because one of the things that's happening in kind of South America now, like you said, there's the tourism for there's tourism for coke and there's tourism for partying and all that stuff. But then there is also this new, or not new, but a growing industry, it seems, for going to the jungle and doing ayahuasca and all stuff like that. Is there anything like that in Mexico, or is that all more kind of like South America?
I think Mexico has more of a history of that than anywhere in the world as far as tourism goes. Mexico had Maria Sabina, which she gave mushrooms to the Beatles. She was like a pioneer when it came to introducing the West to psilocybin use, traditional psilocybin use, as far as medicinal and folk magic practice in Mexico. After I think somebody wrote a book about her, and a bunch of famous people went down there to just do mushrooms. Right? She would do these things called veladas, basically midnight sigils, where you would take mushrooms and prepare in a very specific way with some very specific ingredients, and basically go off and talk to the gods for a bit. After I think there's definitely been a Joe Rogan phenomenal effect in general culture that has led many people to look within some of these practices as a way to kind of like figure themselves out, which has led to a just myriad of industries out there. Specifically, and I know a lot of places in Mexico where people are doing ayahuasca. And I say ayahuasca because who knows exactly what substances are being gathered. Because as far as I know, what you need to make it is only found in the Amazon basin, and Mexico is not in the Amazon basin, right? But a lot of people have, there's a lot of transformative. I've heard a lot of transformative stories from people coming out of Mexico and experimenting with. There's in Sonora it's bufo, basically toad. Mike Tyson famously went to one of the communities in Sonora and did bufo, which is basically a hallucinogenic scum coming off the back of a toad that they have in the desert out there. They entice it to secrete it. They smear some of the substances off, put it in a mirror, wait for it to dry, and with a knife they sprinkle it on something that you smoke it in. And again, it's a direct elevator to see the Allfather, or whatever you want to call him.
That stuff is interesting, mate. Like, like you said, I think part of it is the Joe Rogan effect, but it does seem to be, obviously, like there was the hippie wave and stuff. There was this idea of kind of like, the LSD thing and everything. And
culturally in Mexico, we've always had that. I did mushrooms when I was a kid because they were there, and the natives that would do them lived right across the street, so they would get us mushrooms. So that was the drug market back then, right? Then it's in Mexico. It's just available. It's just right there. Right? It grew on my family ranch. Some of the magic mushrooms grew on my family ranch. I didn't know how to identify them. My mom and the natives did, but it's always been in the culture, and certain parts of the police and the military have a culture of it as well. It is, completely hidden, and since I'm out of it, I can talk about it. But most of the people that are still in it, it is career ending to talk about, right? because it is very badly seen. But it's there's a few places that were traditionally used for people that went through shit to go. A place like Oaxaca, where where these communities do these use mushrooms in ceremonies. I know a lot of people that I worked with that went down there for some sort of healing, after whatever they went through, and they came back changed, But right now, that it's a different environment, You would go down there, you have to ask somebody that would ask somebody to take you up there. Now there's a sign, Now there's Instagram meetups and stuff like that down there. You can go down there and just there's this whole thing, You can get some Fiji water with your mushrooms while you're in the hillside somewhere in Oaxaca, which is mind blowing.
Well, out here, like in Wales, we used to have the Druids, right?
Yeah.
So the Druids were they were all about that stuff. And then you've got the old Vikings. They're kind of like holy. No, they didn't really have holy people as such, but they had people that were in touch with the other side. Mushrooms were a massive part about everything. And one of the things, mate, I'm just going off the top of my head here because I was just thinking about this earlier. I don't know if you maybe find it interesting. Is one of the things that's always kind of interested me is why is there images of dragons all around the world?
Yeah,
and a lot of the time, because a lot of the time when you speak to people, they'll have these visions and stuff when they've done mushrooms or some other kind of psychedelic, and they'll say that they saw dragons inside the psychedelics, and so because I always used to think, was there dragons around? Did they exist at some point? Because look, I mean, it's just fucking dinosaur with wings, right? Basically. But I thought, that's really unlikely. I don't think that's happened. And I think maybe more because now we only kind of, we want to record stuff that's physical, that we remember, that we've seen and that we've done. Whereas maybe it's just in the past, a lot more stories were passed down that were actually kind of spiritual stories, which we've, because we look at everything in a literal sense, that we're what do they think there was flying dragons around? Well, maybe they never even used to think that, but do you see what I'm getting at? I don't know what I'm getting at, mate. I've just been thinking about this today.
I think the dragon, Mexica culture, Aztec culture has talked about a feathered serpent. Serpents are all over symbology in Mexico. We have a serpent on the flag. An eagle holding a serpent is on the Mexican flag. I think snakes. I think it's not even about dragon. I think it's about snakes with humans. I think somewhere in our past, when we were sleeping calmly in our tree, a giant fucking boa ate a cousin of ours at some point. A cousin that is so far back that we all share it. And that PTSD ridden snake PTSD ridden monkey somehow passed its genetic memory to all of us. I think the snake represents the void. It is a monster that could eat you, I guess. It's something elemental that is outside of you that could fucking consume you. If you could kind of think about it.
And the snake eating its own tail, that's like a popular one too, right? That kind of that continuous circle.
The continuous the symbology of continuous circles that you see a lot. I think again, it's all over. China has it. I've seen hermetic stuff representing that symbol as well. And we have a feathered serpent. I would talk about a feathered serpent eating its tail when I post pictures of kids pretending to be cartel members and then being cartel members, or people venerating criminal life or police life, because my side of it was guilty of it as well, and seeing the massive corruption or the massive evil that some of these criminal groups do or some of these police forces are capable of. So I think that's the whole symbol of that cycle, that snake eating its tail, and how you can be the hero one day and then the next day, you could, hey, liberators of Afghanistan, and then you're flying a C-130 out of it. Yeah. If anybody remembers that last picture of that last plane, that plane leaving with the people dropping off of it, its tail number was I think it was 119 instead of 1911. It was some play on the numbers, right? So every now and then I like to look for symbology out there in the world. It's amazing how you can see some of these things out there.
So this 9/11, right, is
something about that date in history is bad shit, right? So I write about the Romans, and 9/11 is around about the date where the three legions of Varus went into the German forests and never came out again. It's a massive disaster in the Roman Empire, changed the course of Europe and the world. That was 9/11. And I was reading one the other day. It was Winston Churchill's book, The River War, which is about the campaign in Sudan. And there was a massive fuck up there on 9/11. I'm like, it's not a good day to do shit, basically. Well, it's a good day to do stuff if you're the quote-unquote bad guy. I don't know, well, people are going to say that I don't think Al-Qaeda are bad guys now. Of course I do, but they're somebody's good guy. All right? There are bad guys, they're somebody's good guy.
Yeah.
And mate, the other thing as well is the weird one about snakes, mate, is if you're some third wave feminist, you probably say that the snakes are on the flag because it's a symbol of the patriarchy, because snake is a dick. Yeah. I mean, that's the kind of point in society that we've got to now.
I think there's definitely a weird. I'm really into symbolism like that. Like this is how you can see how deep into it I am. There you go.
Oh shit!
Giant ass book about symbols right here. I study a lot of it specifically because I do classes for law enforcement and private sector related to Mexican criminal occultism, and I speak about it. What does it mean when you find somebody out there with a red Santa Muerte rosary on, or what does it mean if you find a lemon with two prongs sticking out of it and some black lettering and a picture of the FBI bureau chief of the area you're in? What does that mean? These are the type of questions that I get sometimes. So I've studied this type of stuff in a very deep manner. And when you talk about symbols and weird coincidences and stuff like that, I think that most of history is that, just a weird set of, it always rhymes in a way if you kind of look at the ways that it plays out. And I've always looked for things that mirror each other. So, researching some of the IRA counteroffensives against UK forces in the Troubles, and seeing how that's mirrored in places like Mexico and how they're utilizing some of the same tactics now in the places where they're kind of outnumbered. And they're taking, they're right now they're like somebody in a field in Guanajuato came up with the same mobile mortar solution that the IRA came up with to, plan that attack way back when. People had to Google that. I don't know a lot about those details, but basically they came up with the same solution.
Yeah. So one of the things when I was first in the army, when it was still a threat, was one of the jobs you'd have on camp guard. I'm not sure if the guys still do it, but you used to, anywhere that was a likely place for a truck to pull up and set up as a mortar base plate, then that was something that you do, and to, so that you would never basically surrender in the initiative of like, all right, we're not going to check these places. But for people who don't know, I mean, some of our American listeners might not know, some of our younger British listeners might not know that getting mortared in your base and stuff in the UK used to be something that happened, and it happened with, unfortunately with fatalities and stuff. And something that you were talking about earlier, mate, was making me think is, one thing that we had in favour of Britain with the IRA is that Britain is an island and Ireland is an island. So getting weapons there was not very easy, and a lot of the weapons that were getting taken there were intercepted, whereas Mexico and America share this enormous land border, it's most weapons used there come from America, right?
Yes, and you'll hear. So before I say this to all my to all the people that follow me in the U.S., I am pro-gun.
Yes, same, mate.
I want everybody to have both the responsibility to train themselves in the use and maintain that fucking level of training throughout their life, because it's a responsibility before it's a right. With that being said, most guns being utilized for violence and murder in Mexico, probably 70% of them come from the United States. And they come from straw purchases, people selling their guns in parking lots, some of the gun show loopholes and stuff like that, or just people's guns being jacked from their houses and ending up on the black market. There is no getting around that. There's a lot of people that will try and discredit me in saying that that's not the case, that a lot of them are actually given by the military to the cartels. Like, yes, thank you for this G36 H&K. I'm going to give it to my cartel members. That's not the case. A lot of the guns that have been cited as being used by cartels that were given to the government in Mexico or bought by the government in Mexico are actually cases of police forces that have been held up on corruption charges, and that they get detained with the firearms that they had for service. So they get counted as cartel captured weapons. And most of the weapons being utilized in Mexico are come from the U.S. And a lot of them, in the box with the instruction manual. Some of them with receipts. Some of them with the gun store box details still in the box as it makes its way across. It's hard to get a gun if you're anywhere near the poverty line in Mexico, but everybody has one. New Year's comes around and everybody's shooting one in the air.
Mate, we mentioned, I just jumped on some, like I said, something a little kind of flippantly about the woke and patriarchy and all that stuff. I always wonder, does anybody in Mexico ever talk about woke?
Yes, and it's a phenomenon that is very recent.
Right.
And it is a clear sign of the current state we're in. Mexico just 3 years ago elected a far leftist populist president. And phenomenons like federally legalized abortion. Mexico was unheard of 10 years ago. And now it's a federally legalized thing. Federal school mandates dictating gender pronouns and scandals on social media about people not using them or using them. Feminist marches are a new phenomenon, kind of like popping up in Mexico. So it used to not be, but in Mexico, there's a few Mexicos. There's northern Mexico, there's southern Mexico, there's central Mexico, right? Central Mexico has always been like the cultural, it's a capital and it's also the cultural capital. So everything happens there first and then kind of radiates to the outside of the country, if ever. And that's what's happening right now. Like wokeness is the new thing in Mexico, it's so far into wokeness now that, the whole statue, canceling statues and ripping them down is happening as well. They're canceling white people in Mexico.
Oh, good. They're terrible people.
It's one of the things that I was always proud about in Mexico, that my foster brother is whiter than you, man. He's like green eyes, freckled, he looks like a Viking, and he doesn't speak a lick of English, right? And he's my foster brother, and people would just freak out by that. There's a lot of white people in Mexico. And not the whole privilege that I hear about, other parts of the world. We don't give a shit about it here. As far as the privilege it should come with, but there's a whole thing about canceling whitexicans. Now they have this whole thing, like white Mexicans are whitexicans, and we're canceling them. They're like, we're done with white Mexicans now, apparently. And that's happening in the center of the country. It's like
And why is that? Were whitexicans more likely to get on TV or something? Like, what was the?
Mexico has always been a closeted racist country, in a lot of ways, and not even that closeted. I mean, we still have blackface on TV comedy shows, right? And there's racist jokes, just and sayings being screamed at and yelled at all throughout the country, and it's like a common thing. But I think the whole aspect of telenovelas, or the idealized Mexican, as far as what's being sold on TV in Mexico, has always been, these Caucasian people that are very European and somehow live in a very impoverished part of town, that marry into a rich family, that have a brunette that is more stereotypically Mexican, who's the villain, and trying to make it impossible for the blonde, good telenovela lady, right? That's something that's happened a lot in Mexico. Or toy commercials with, kids, or, blue-eyed blonde kids, fabric softener commercials, and you're there with your friends, and you're like, Is this from Europe? Is commercial from Europe? But yeah, wokeness is a thing in Mexico right now.
When I went to India, when I used to do the security on the ships, we used to go into Indian ports, and I went to buy some sun cream, and they had in the sun cream, it was like this stuff to make you whiter, and we were kind of asking people about it, and it was basically like, because the caste system there, the lighter you are, the higher up the caste system, right?
Yeah.
So no one wants to look like, we were all trying to get suntanned and look super dark, but no one there wants to be dark because then people look down on you. And this is the crazy thing about racism and stuff, mate. Like, don't get me wrong. Obviously, this is the funny thing about 2021 as well. We have to preface everything we say, like you just did with the guns. Now I have to preface this. I do not believe the racism is a good thing, right? But what I'll say is Britain and America are a lot less racist than most of the world.
I've heard more about racism in my last 3 years as a new American than my whole life in Mexico, right? As far as what's racism, what's bad about racism. In Mexico, I just lived racism. It's just around me, right? From terms of endearment to anybody that's brown, a little bit on the brown side, hey, prietito, which would be, it's like that's what you call a term of endearment for somebody that's in the brown side. If somebody's blonde and white, or if somebody's white, they're automatically the good guy, or they're the handsomest guy there, right? It just these are the good guys, or the handsome ones, and or giving there was an experiment in Mexico. They gave this I think she was a Gora Indian kid, native kid, on the brown side. They gave her a black Barbie and a white Barbie. And they asked this kid, probably 4 or 5 years, 5-year-old, which one is the evil one, which one is the good one. And she grabbed the white, this is the good Barbie, and the brown one is the bad one. Now, she's obviously programmed by some of the stuff that she sees on TV. Now, some of this wokeness is merited, I guess, is what I'm saying. As far as
absolutely
the outlashing of some of these marginalized communities, and the minority of Mexico, which is kind of like mestizo brown, So I get there's something to scream about when it comes to that, but other stuff is just ridiculous. Like there's this whole gender pronoun thing going on in Mexico where they want to make it like a legal thing that you have to guesstimate that on somebody. And
that's where it gets weird. It's not like, hey, you want to be called whatever, that's cool. But do we really need a law about this? And this is what's so funny, bro. It's like, you've got people screaming like white supremacy, the state is evil, it's full of white supremacists. We want to give the state more power over pronouns. Like, well, pick one. Is the state evil and full of this stuff, or is the state your friend? Because you're asking these supposed evil people to then enforce laws on people. Like, it makes no fucking sense.
There was a massive protest over female rights, and this whole concept of feminicide that's being really being popularized in Mexico right now, where they want to any murder that is done to a female, they want their own category for it, and it has to be even worse than killing a guy, right? So this whole thing right now in Mexico, that's bad, but we want to make this even worse, right? When it's a country that 90% of all homicides never get solved. And they're complaining about how one gender is being punished. If you kill one gender, it's being punished less than if you kill the other. Or if it should be punished more. I mean, it's some of the discussions are just ridiculous. There's schools in Mexico that have dirt floors, and they want to create this completely new prosecutor office in each state specifically for the murder of women. Which again, I get the sentiment, I get the desperation. Women should be protected above all else, as well as children. But these are arguments you have after you solved shit.
But that's the problem, mate, isn't it? Is they can't solve shit, so they make up something that's like, oh well, look what we've done. It's like, all right, cool, But what about these 90% of unsolved murder? No. Look at this shiny new thing.
Yeah.
And I think when you know that that's what's going on, it's even more insulting to you.
It's the classic misdirection. The current president in Mexico said all of the stuff that the past administrations did against drug cartels is bad. The military should stay out of it. This whole giant police force that was created is bullshit, and we should hug them instead of shoot them. And reconciliation is probably what we should do. And you know what he did? He militarized police forces in Mexico. He created a whole new federal police force in the form of National Guard unit that is nothing more than a glorified border protection agency for Mexico now. That isn't even working because look at the loads of migrants showing up at the border, and he's basically doing everything exactly cookie cutter like the past administration. And people are still calling him the second coming.
Oh, so he's still popular.
I think, he's somewhere hovering at 70% approval right now.
That is amazing. 70% is amazing for a politician.
It's how 60 something to 70, something like that. Don't quote me on that, but he's popular.
Yeah.
And again, he's a populist president who represents everything opposed to the past presidencies. Is that basically, Mexico is just looking for what's next right now.
Yeah, which is understandable. It's like when things aren't working, it's quite easy to just say like, oh, well, what's the opposite of this? I mean, that's why politics goes back and forth so much, right?
Well, I think it's a pretty interesting canary in the mine in global politics. China has a president for life. Russia has a president for life. Mexico has a guy who's an open Maduro pro-Chavista president who just gave a bunch of private contracts to people, to the military and people in military command positions, which is unheard of. So I'm not saying that we're on the way to become, dictatorship, but it's interesting.
I think we're all on the way to becoming dictatorships, mate, to be quite honest.
It's interesting how the whole concept of a single guy in charge now is like that's what's leading global politics right now.
It's fucking mental. I mean, look, I just think the idea, to be honest, that you have a group of people, like a country like America, where you've got over 300 million people, and America, for people who don't know America is not one country. America is a bunch of different countries. You travel America, bro. You know this.
I'm in a different state every weekend. I travel. I think I've seen more of America than most Americans.
Yeah.
And yes, it is like fucking going from Narnia to like the fucking Power Rangers universe. Yeah. When you travel from places like California to Nebraska, it's pretty fucking mind blowing how different it is.
And the idea that you're going to have one group of people like making decisions over this insanely diverse group of people. I mean, it really is the same as like, well, obviously, like, a lot of people people talk about the EU, but the EU isn't as strong as, obviously the American government. But I think just in general, this day and age, the idea that we can have groups of a few elected officials, quote unquote, elected officials, because I don't believe that it's fair to say that really when that's your only choice is between establishment people, it's really not that much of a choice. It's not like there's any opportunity of getting someone in there. It's like, right, this is the person that represents my views. And I think as people kind of just, so, those people don't represent us, those people don't get anything done, people turn more and more to, like you were saying, populists. And populists tend to be either on the far left or the far right. And you end up with, in one way or another, a dictator. And I do worry, mate, because it's like, I'm a big fan of history, and you look at it and you go, oh, you know what? People are generally not free. Like, that really doesn't happen very often.
No. Whatever happened in the UK that led to the punk fashion scene being a thing, whatever happened in the US that led to fucking, Woodstock, all that shit. That is Goldilocks territory shit that is behind us, I think. You're a fan of history. I'm a fan of history. I am traveling a country and patrolling some of its borders on both sides and seeing how some of the military is reacting, and some of the morale within the military forces by some of the people that I talked to, keeping an eye on global politics. Man, Rome is falling. If you have the eyes to see, that isn't blinded by a bald eagle screeching in the background, shooting two AK-47s and an Uzi and shit like that in the background. If you have the eyes to see, man, how power dynamics in the world are changing. There's how Taiwan is. Our kids are going to see Taiwan fall, or us. We're probably going to see it with our kids next to us. And then probably Ukraine. There's a reason why walls are being built up, because people are entrenching. That's where we're at in history. That Goldilocks period is behind us. Like, I think we're moving into something pretty weird and cold.
I agree, mate. And I just think that that's probably the natural state of human civilization.
Yeah.
To be quite honest, I don't think the average person thinks like you and me, mate. I just don't think the average person wants freedom. I don't think they want it.
I make this comparison every now and then. I have many friends, many patriotic friends in the United States that have an American flag tattooed on their back. And don't take me wrong, I believe in the Constitution, and it's a fucking great document, and it's a great country to live in. But there are things that are going away. People talk a lot about freedom and personal freedoms and shit like that, but they rarely talk about personal responsibilities. I come from a place where there is dangerous freedom. And I think that is something that is missing in the eyes of a lot of people that have enjoyed this packaged fake freedom that you guys, in the first world view as freedom. Take a drive down the poorest shanty town in Tijuana, and there's no building code. And take a drive down the richest part of Tijuana, and there is no building code. People are making their houses with however they want, ridiculous to extravagant to whatever. I can have a party at my parents' house till 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. or all night if I want to. Cops show up and I'll pay them off. And that's not freedom. It kind of is. That's why a lot of Americans that's why a lot of Americans kind of venture their way out. And again, I'm not saying that is a good thing. I'm just saying that the freedom that you were sold when you were a kid by watching G.I. Joe is not real. There is a danger inherent to all freedom, and it usually comes with responsibility at the start of it.
Mate, like I said, I also have to state for the record that I am pro Second Amendment. So now that I've said that, I keep saying to people look, the fact that you have weapons does not make you free, because tell me that you can do what you like in America, and if the police and the Fed agencies show up, that they're just going to leave if you tell them to. It's not going to happen. So the fact that you've got guns doesn't make you free. Now, does it mean that you're more likely to stay freer if you chose to use those guns? Sure, but it's the using them in this situation. If an outside agency is telling you that you can't do something, if you have guns and don't use them, then you're not free. And then if you use them, you're probably going to die in America, like has been shown whenever somebody does stand up against them. And I do think that really the only freedom that you can find in the world, true freedom, is in countries which are actually borderline failed states or very, very, what people would describe as not dysfunctional.
I think the word freedom was stolen years back by people that make cool movies with Mel Gibson, running across the field. If you kind of look at some of the people that I know that I respect a lot, that train themselves, that travel, you'll get people in my comment sections when I post a horrible cartel video somewhere saying, "Well, that's why you don't visit a shithole country," right? Which is something that I hear a lot. And I remember this guy from Texas with a Punisher skull logo on his
original.
Texas, a bunch of guns all over his Instagram account. Owns a tactical company somewhere like that, and that's why you don't go to shithole countries. Now that's a fascinating thing to hear from a Texan. a fear-based statement of not going to places that are dangerous, and with a Punisher skull logo on a AR-15 all over your shit, talking about all that. I understand the sentiment. It's funny coming from a Texan. The the world's a big place. The world's scary. Like the last time you're talking about being mugged. The last time I was almost mugged, and the reason I wasn't mugged because I'm a weirdo, and I fucking did a bunch of shit, including some cardio and parkour. Was in Michigan, in Detroit, Michigan. That was the last place that I was almost mugged, and I frequent Mexico City, Guadalajara, Tijuana, Juarez, Los Angeles, and a bunch of other parts of the known for crime and shit like that. The last time I was mugged was in Detroit. Does that mean that I shouldn't visit Detroit? Well, I'd advise most people not to visit Detroit, but then I'm from Tijuana, so.
My friend Dean, I worked on his book with him. He's a former Special Forces guy who he rode the entire length of the Pan American Highway in 99 days. So he rode all the way through South America, Central America, and everything. He didn't get mugged until he was in America, like the USA. There's the only time he had any crime happen to him, the entirety of the Pan American Highway, was in a parking lot, outside of a hotel somewhere in the American Midwest.
Yeah, petty crime, yeah. They probably don't have a local cartel that would beat this criminal's ass for fucking with tourists, just like some parts of Mexico, which again, dangerous freedom. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm just saying that there's a difference,
And that's that old that the thing isn't is a trade off for everything. And this unfortunately, I think what we've seen in society, we've seen in through history is when you trade freedom for quote unquote security, you end up with fucking genocide. You end up with, because where they extrapolate that to is, well, for people's safety, we have to kill these dangerous thinkers because they're a danger to other people's safety. And so, like, it might be dangerous if you just sit in your house and, might not be dangerous if you do everything the state tells you to. But even then, you say one wrong thing and then it's very dangerous for you all of a sudden.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
there's no such thing as not a dangerous life, I suppose, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. This weird new reality. I think COVID was like a bench that everybody sat in. And all the powers that be are rearranging shit around behind the scenes. This new reality is going to be unveiled in front of us. I'm not Alex Jones. I'm not here to talk about conspiracy theories and shit like that.
About gay frogs. Want to talk about the gay frogs, turning the frogs gay?
Wizard people.
That's really good.
ISIS terrorist training camps in Juarez. What can you tell us about? Right. I actually had a shout out on InfoWars.
That's goals, mate.
By Alex Jones. It is. I've lived this a real life, and that's one of my most interesting man of the world moments from Dos Equis guy. In every segment of the stuff that I kind of cover, right? I do training related to travel safety. People that were really adventurous about traveling are not traveling anymore or are avoiding certain parts. Mexican occultism. Not only Mexico, but the U.S. is experiencing a phenomenon in the form of a death deity that was revived in Mexico. And it's one of the fastest growing faiths in the U.S. and Mexico.
Have you got time to talk about that, mate? I don't.
Sure.
That's awesome. So you mean the fact that people are fetishizing death and records of death numbers and everything like that?
Yeah, it's like if you want to think about an elemental thing in this epoch, it's death, right? That's what most people's minds have been on for this past year is death. It's in the economy, it's in I don't know, you can see in the music there's a bunch of weird shit in the music industry related to voids and transdimensional shit and Alex Jones double fucking shenanigans going on in concerts, people getting murdered and shit like that. And so we're very much in the current state of mind. It's like a weird entropy going on.
And it's weird, because if you look back at, like, say, Stoic philosophers and stuff, a lot of them will tell you to think about death, but it's always been in the terms of think about death because it will motivate you to live. Whereas the way we're looking at it now in the West is think about death, be terrified, stay in your fucking house, and then die. And then you can die later on in life. Once once you haven't lived life at all, then you can die. But I think that's the difference, isn't it? Because mate, I'm sure you're the same as me. There's not a day that goes by I don't think about death. And some days it's a very nice feeling because you become at peace with it. And other days fucking terrifying, but it's always there, and you have to use it as a motivational tool. But like in the UK, mate, I don't know. I'd be interested in your opinion on this because obviously, you can look from the outside. But do you think like the fact that religion has gone from like a lot of Western countries has allowed this fear of death and stuff to like fill that void?
Yeah, I mean, it's Mexico was the most Catholic country in the world for a long time because Mexico was gone through some shit. Desperation breeds faith. But right now we're going through this weird anything Catholic, anything colonial, anything like that is being canceled by the youth. So now all of these weird folk traditions and religions are being reawakened that are more native and are more in tune with some sort of weird, politically correct thing going on, throughout the world. A lot of my, melanin deprived brethren from Ireland, getting back to their weird roots, Celtic roots or whatever. Some of my white American friends thinking they're Viking, having altars to Thor or naming their kids in a Norse way. I think all of this is basically a weird, generally speaking, the whole world is saying fuck you to what was comfortable and or known, and it's the weird awakening. Mexico's going through this whole thing with folk saints. I mean, there's a cartel guy that died like a decade ago who's now a saint. It's a free for everybody can be a saint now. You just have to die in a weird way, and you can be a saint.
Do you also? So what used to happen in medieval times, mate, and stuff? I know people used to, if you died and you greased the palms of the right bishop, you could become a saint. So is that kind of what happened with the cartel guy?
Yeah, I mean, instead of the greasing the palms, there was guys with the firearms. Making people venerate this. The statue.
I mean, I shouldn't laugh, but fuck.
It's Mexico. It's a thing. Mexico has a very close relationship with the death that is very different than the United States. We have parties at cemeteries. The only exposition that Americans have had to that culture is through that Pixar movie Coco, I think. But Coco is like soft. It's a soft core death worship. That's why I call Coco. Soft.
I haven't seen
Coco. This. Coco is basically a Pixar movie where it exposes American audiences to traditional Mexican death worship. Basically, when I say death worship, I mean ancestor worship. In Coco, the main character wants to be a musician. His family wants him to be a shoe repairman, like all the rest of his family, and he goes on to this journey into the underworld and meets his ancestors and. This whole fucking self-discovery thing, which is legit, that whole movie is basically a fucking mushroom trip in and of itself, within any of the Santa Muerte traditions that you can find in Mexico. But that's just my opinion. But you can see in that movie, they made it palatable for Americans. If you go to places like Michoacan, where that movie is kind of based on, as far as the style of the way they celebrated death. People there actually dig up their ancestors and their the skulls, and they'll put them out during Day of the Dead celebrations. Feed it alcohol and food like you would any weird any weird death deity type thing, and they make a whole event out of it, and then they put their dead back into their little box and then put them away
till the next party.
Yeah, but that's a lot of Mexico has a relationship to death that is that close, right? It's not uncommon to go and party at the graveyard. It's like a completely normal thing. But now, it's COVID has taken away at least 2 years of that tradition for people because cemeteries were closed. So people haven't been able to visit their dead, and you can see that.
Hang on. Wait. Cemeteries were closed.
Cemeteries are closed as a.
What?
I mean, it's the government, they know best.
Oh, mate.
Cemeteries have been closed because, again, Mexico cemeteries are gathering places. They're legit places that a lot of people go to. It's not like the U.S. where you see a graveyard, just an abandoned graveyard somewhere. Mexico, they're always places where people go to. So those are those have been closed for about 2 years and limited as far as the celebrations. You could see a cultural depression across the country because of it. How people are not only missing out on that cultural transference from sharing some of those traditions with their kids, but also neglecting them later on. Like there's some weird shit happening with that as well.
Once you break a habit, like it's very like it's hard to get back into kind of like habits and things, isn't it? And also, I think like the whole thing about being around the dead and understanding death and thinking about death, and you'd think that if there was ever a time to have that, it would be now.
Yeah,
right.
And the difference it makes in people's lives. I had this weird experiment, not experiment. I didn't experiment with my kid, but I am, I grew up Catholic, and through my time working and through my time traveling and stuff like that, I got introduced to some Mexican folk traditions and related to healing, related to self-reflection, and I took very specific imagery of death from my culture, and I decided to make it a focal point of my introspection. Right. So I'm not saying I'm a mystic or any sort of philosopher, but basically it's some people put a skull on top of their desk. I put a statue of Santa Muerte somewhere in my house, and I reflect on the fact that a lot of my friends have died, and I might die I'm going to die one day, and everything around me is impermanent. Right. That's my way of reflecting. It's not a creepy statue. It's a statue made of bone that has a lot of history. And, I put flowers on it. Every now and then I light a candle. My daughter has grown around that and sees it as something that's completely normal and not scary. My daughter is impervious to Halloween frights, like some kids at her school will see a guy in a skeleton mask and they will pee their pants. My daughter goes up to it and that's a cool mask, a dog died recently, a family dog, and she knew exactly what was happening. She was 6 at the time. Her little cousins are very devout Christians, and do not have that exposition to things of that nature, entropy and death. And it was like a whole traumatic thing. Well, don't tell them that the dog died.
It's gone to a farm.
Yeah, that's just. And I'm like, no, it died. No, it's cold. Look, come here. See, it's warm still, but it's gonna turn stiff, and then we're gonna put it underneath a tree, and it's gonna feed the tree. And next summer, the flowers are gonna be amazing, probably. And she got to see that whole process. That is a difference that whole cultural element provides to somebody. I think if people want to know the difference, cultural difference, I think that is one of them. That exposition at an early age to death as something to be laughed at, celebrated, and or be around and not be afraid of it. It's not a spooky thing to see a skeleton. It's like it's made of sugar in Mexico. You can eat it.
One of the reasons that we've seen this rise in mental problems with veterans in the American military, British military and stuff is because we're so like unused to seeing death and being around death and thinking about death. And also most people aren't, religious. So when you go on operations and you start losing mates, you have no context to how to fit that in. It's just the person was there, then it's gone. And on top of obviously not having your mate around, and then you're like, what happened to him? How is this, how does this fit into life and the world and everything, mate? And I think that's massively overlooked.
You don't want to expose yourself to what to do around death when you're in a battlefield. A friend of mine had this term. I don't remember the exact term he used, but it's something related to of field, like military field care after death, basically, right? Or what to do before death. Now, if you, as a member of the armed services or as a police officer or whatever you are, have experienced holding on to somebody's hand and or holding on to somebody's head with your legs, or pressing somebody's shoulders down to the ground as they're bleeding out, and being very conscious that the person that is with you is going away or seeping away, what do you tell that person, right? Has anybody ever had that talk with you? You know, do you ask them if they're Catholic? Do you ask them if they want to say something to somebody out there important? Are you going to write that down in a pen and paper that you're always going to keep next to your heart? Which is something that I used to do when I do equipment check on everybody before we would go out. I would always ask them to have a pen and paper in the pocket near their heart. And they were thinking about, writing down license plates and shit like that. No, man, it's to write down last will and testaments. And that was a very sobering thing to tell the new guys coming in. But again, being prepared for death in a battlefield, what are you going to say over somebody's body? Do you think it matters that the person on the ground doesn't share your faith? Or does it matter that I listened to a bunch of Richard Dawkins videos on YouTube growing up, and I don't believe in anything. But there's somebody dying here right now that does believe in something. Should I lie to this person? Should I comfort this person? What should I do? That type of shit.
Definitely don't read him, Richard Dawkins.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's always an atheist in somewhere, and there's more of them now. And again, I'm all about it. If you don't believe in anything, man, I'm fucking jealous of shit. I'm jealous of people that don't believe in nothing. That's a pretty good place to be. But when you believe in something or something that's important to you in a spiritual way, something that brings you comfort out there, is it not humane to provide that for that person out there in the field that they're going away?
It's like a morphine. It's like giving someone morphine, right?
Yeah, I mean,
but like a spiritual morphine.
Placebos work.
Yeah.
That's about it. People talk about, hey, Ed, what do you think about this? I'm very, this year I've been kind of a bit more open about my spirituality. It's a very personal thing. It's related to my experience, it's related to my culture. And I show some of the symbology related to it. People automatically see a skeleton and a reaper and they think cartels and shit like that, which is, it's fine. Most, actually the majority of cartel members are just Catholic, which is pretty. So if you want to look at a very popular cartel religious like icon, it would be a cross. It wouldn't be a skeleton. But it's helped me a lot, specifically the process of going through it and then coming out of the other end of it, trying to figure out my own, people going through conflict and coming out of the other end of it and being tossed out into the normal world or whatever you want to call it. Experience that sudden stop and basically just having to readapt to a weird new reality. You were out there somewhere in charge of all this equipment and with people that were, everything was life and death. Everything was really important, and now it's stopped, and now you're out. Yeah, and now you're out of it. Along with the fact that death and accompanying somebody into death and doing or being somebody that knows what to do to a body after it's gone. Along with that, I think another part of it that is not kind of like talked about at all is that gladiators would get a wooden sword, a rudius. I got a yellow paper that said, resignation on it. Somebody might get their, discharge papers. Somebody might get a party or something like that. Whatever it is, it is a very, very much a death. It is very much a death. And I think one of the biggest lies that our parents and some of our religious instructors have told us over the years is that we only die once. We die several times during our lives, and we get to redo a lot of shit. It's the people that don't realize it that suffer the most, I think. And there's levels to death, And again, this is the whole spiritual side of the fact that I've been talked more openly about that, how I use it as a metaphor or as a symbol for the impermanence of things, and how every day every day could be a death and a rebirth in a way. I use it specifically for healing, and getting off the booze. This year has been not an easy ride, and I've used all of the help that I could.
Are you cool to talk about that?
Sure.
So has that been like a tandem thing with your spiritualities, like stopping drinking and I suppose I should ask first, mate. Like, what was the reason behind was booze? Was it like a self-medicating booze?
Yeah, I posted a meme video the other day of me in like a rehabilitation center in Mexico. Just listening to a dude just ranting about how he's going to die drinking and on drugs. That is exactly the amount of help I got with substance abuse in Mexico. That's all I had. Basically go into these groups where you would make it. If you showed up a few times too drunk to work, or if you were exhibiting fucking drunk behavior, you would get sent off to some of these groups, and then we come back and you go about your business. There was really no help. It's only through my process in sobriety that I realized that I hadn't really been sober in any single birthday since I was 16, and I'm about to turn 40, so that's a lot of birthdays drunk. Also did a weird calculation as far as how much beer I drank during a week or a month.
Oh God!
And it was,
go on.
It was, if anybody out there knows what those big, giant Foster's Australian beer cans are, those big ones they sell in the US. I would drink 3 of those before I would go to bed, or else I wouldn't go to bed. They're horrible. I know Australians say that those aren't there. It's not Australian beer. It is Australian beer. Own it.
You're going to get cancelled in Australia for saying that.
It doesn't matter. Own it. Foster's is the best product Australia makes as far as beers. There you go.
They make authoritarianism pretty well.
It's Hunger Games out there. I just doing a quick recap, and I said, holy shit, this is how much I'm drinking. And then COVID hit, and that changed things. Alcohol abuse wasn't as easy to hide during COVID because everybody was inside, so there was no chances to hide that from people. And
you weren't on the road as much, presumably.
Yeah, and I was still on the road a little bit, and the road life was also a great way for me to hide my raging alcoholism. A few people out there that might be listening to this might have shared some margaritas with me or some beers. Don't feel bad about it. It was fun while it lasted. But I just came to a point where I saw it was completely unsustainable, and it was right around this time last year. When my dad contracted COVID towards the end of towards the beginning of last year. Almost lost him. Did a bunch of Jason Bourne level shit, setting up hospital settings inside of houses in Tijuana, and fucking bribing oxygen canister dudes to set me up with a breathing system for my dad and shit like that. It was not easy. But my dad went through it, and I made this promise that if my dad went through that, I would sacrifice something. And as I was saying that, I was taking a sip of a very cold Bohemia wheat beer, refreshing as shit, man. It's so good, so good. And I stopped drinking it, put it down on the ground, and that was the last drink I had. And it was the last drink I had, but it's not the last time I thought about it,
Mate, I fucking feel you on that.
My first month was fine, It was like, it's the first week was rough a little bit, had some cravings. Second week was like taking a bad edible, taking a bad marijuana edible that it was pretty kind of off, maybe, third week I was shaking. Third week was pretty bad, and second month was a nightmare. Like if you want to talk about death, that's what it felt like. I tested myself for COVID twice during that period because I thought I had.
You were kind of hoping you had COVID, just to be like, to know it wasn't the alcohol.
It would explain it, maybe it's COVID, the pain, the withdrawals of it, it was after that I got some professional help, and I got a very severe talking down to by the doctor there, saying that going cold turkey with alcohol is the stupidest thing you can do. It is one of the only addictions that'll kill you if you leave it, he said. And not even,
Amy Winehouse, right?
Yeah, I mean, he said, like even heroin doesn't kill you if you leave it, but alcohol will. You need to take a lot of supplements. You need to monitor some things as you're going off it, and it's not something that should be done that way. But I am retarded and Mexican, so I said, "Fuck it, I'll do it cold turkey," which I do not recommend for anybody to do. And it's been life changing, man. It's been day and night. Not all positive. I'm not going to be the one that says, "Oh, it's changed my life for the better in every way." No, everything's in full HD. Everything hurts more. There's no refuge. I can't hide. I can't sleep all night like a dead body like I used to because I was drunk as shit. I wake up constantly. It's not easy, but I'm more. There's more time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There's more fun. There's like, holy shit! Look at all this time. There's no the recovery day in between the days of being drunk as shit. So it's been a lot of positives to it. But it's, again, people are talking, "Hey, so are you like a straight edge guy now? Like no alcohol? Like you don't want people drinking out?" No, dude. I envy somebody that can just fucking down a 6-pack and fall asleep and not do it again in a few months, but I'm not that guy,
Like I see people like have a beer at the end of the day, and I'd like to be able to have a beer at the end of the day, but I know if I have a beer at the end of the day, I'm walking in the door 3 days later.
Yeah.
Like that's how I know I have to go. I'm the same, mate. Like I agree with you that something that's overlooked is the time you lose to getting fucked up and stuff. That's one, and yeah, like I agree with you, mate. Like I try and go sober for long periods of time, but the fact is that it's fucking hard work, and I take my hat off to you, mate, and I'm glad it's going well for you.
I don't recommend it. That's the first thing I say.
Well, I wouldn't recommend people go through what you went through in the first place, mate. Like, I mean, this is all we're talking about the snake chasing its tail, right? I mean, this is it. It
is. Alcohol is a poison. It's one of those poisons that are, it's an intoxicant. It will intoxicate you, right? Your body will reject it. It's a poison. So in a lot of ways, people that are alcoholics and get drunk a lot are really addicted to near-death experiences. If you kind of think about it.
That's interesting, mate. Yeah, that's fucking true.
In this reality, as far as I know, I've done some fucking psychedelic shit in my life, and I've done some fucking real life psychedelic shit in my life as well. In this reality, the closest you can be to death is being asleep drunk. That is the closest that anybody can be to death other than general anesthesia. So think about the aspect of somebody letting go of that and just completely shutting off aspect in their nature. That is one of the hardest things that alcoholics. That's one of the things that alcoholics miss. That complete body depression by being completely fucking just drowned drunk. I think that specifically, at least for me, is what I think about. Yeah, just being able to just, this reality is not okay right now. Let me just drink these, check out for a bit, and check out, where you just wake up and you're like, wallet, keys, the car isn't covered in blood, and the hood isn't covered in blood. So I didn't run over anybody. It's fine. Go back to sleep.
Mate, thank you so much for today, mate. I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Yeah, no worries.
Before we head off, is there any parting words you'd like to leave people with? Where can they find you? All that kind of stuff.
People can find me on my Instagram account, Ed's Manifesto, at Ed's Manifesto. On shadow banned, so make an effort.
Who isn't? All the cool kids are, mate.
All the cool kids are, so I'm shadow banned as shit on there. I also have a website, www.edsmanifesto.com, where I sometimes share stuff on my blog, and my class calendar is on there as well. So people can check that out, please. And that's about it. I'm out there. If people want to learn more about some of these classes, just check out the website.
Mate, thanks so much for today. You're welcome back anytime, mate. Anything we can do for you, please let me know.
Just enjoy the fireworks that are coming.
Sold a dream to all of us, a dream that we'd all die for, a reason for us all to live and something we could fight for. I might just help a man up to his feet or hold a newborn, but no matter what I do, my hands remembering my rifle.